Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Punditer, your realist, geopolitical, and current news obscured pundit. And today, title of my video, the EU 2024 election ramifications, which may or may not change anything in the geopolitical sphere at all. Well, here's what I have in terms of explaining everything for you guys. I have an article titled The 5 Key Takeaways After the Far-Right Surges in the European Parliament Elections by the Washington Post. And I'm going to be breaking down every paragraph and explaining why I think we got to keep our expectations low, as I'm going to be real with you. So the first paragraph, but the gamble is a risk. Irrespective of the results, Macron will remain president for another 3 years, but his party, the largest in France, National Assembly, could lose crucial seats to the National Rally, the second largest party. If Macron loses, he would effectively cede control over much domestic policies for the rest of his term. So, if he does lose, would France's geopolitical and internal policies even change? Well, in my opinion, maybe slightly or slowly, but definitely not rapidly at all, if I'm being real with you guys. As France's parliament would have to restrict itself first before any significant changes would be implemented. For example, the internal policies that Macron's opposition party members would like to see enacted would be a reduction of foreign workers and immigrants and return to internal affairs rather than foreign ones. And I think there's a lot of high expectations for that last part in what I'm saying to you guys. And I personally don't think that's going to be the case. Just because we can look at, our, former president here in America with his propositions, and also in Italy, recently with Meloni and her promises for Italy, as we also saw how that went. I digress. This moment wasn't shared across Europe. However, in Poland and Hungary, nationalist parties ranked first, but lost seats compared with 2019 vote. But you see here now, this is interesting. You have Western countries seeking more or less better hardcore policies to handle their internal issues. Whereas in Eastern part of Europe, it seems to be more wanting to let go of any hardcore internal political policies, i.e. basically more liberalization, i.e. bringing in people regardless of their religion, their ethnicity, their culture, their way of going in life. They want more nuance in things rather than keeping things either stagnant or the way that it is. Though I would argue for them, pay attention to what's going on to the West and, perhaps have a, second opinion on that before you make that decision. Again, continuing. Europe's foreign military policies are mainly directed by its 27 member states, meaning the results of this election are unlikely to have any immediate impact on the bloc's support for Ukraine, which amounts to over $150 billion so far, according to European Council. Joint decisions over sanctions and military aid are largely directed by individual states, where the funding for the bulk of humanitarian assistance also come from. You see here, there is more of a chance of true ramifications on the geopolitical field than the internal policies that a lot of people have that assume that this election would brought up, primarily in Europe, or dare I say perhaps in the Middle East as well, depending on how they enact Ukraine with that conflict as a whole. Though I, in my opinion, don't think anything's going to change, nor would anything change also in the Middle East, just because there's too much to lose on European security and economic prosperity. And if that were to change, then the dynamic of balance and power would change. Though, again, I argue that it is already changing. You're already seeing Russia negotiating with a lot of, East Asian and Southeast Asian countries. For instance, with Korea, North Korea, China, and even recently with Vietnam. All those indicates to me that there is a global shift, especially in the South, to move more in China and Russia's direction, i.e., and also in the economic structure and competitor to the EU, BRICS. So on one hand, you have, the new parties that will have to take over Western European countries' governments within the EU that are more or less for limiting or stopping any aid of all kinds to the conflict in Ukraine and seeking more negotiations on both sides, though I heavily speculate that I don't even think that's going to happen anytime soon. I could be wrong. Hey, and if I am wrong, let me know. I'd greatly appreciate it. While on the other hand, people like me, again, who view this as just talking of doing something rather than actually enforcing such talk into action, basically summarizing that talk is cheap. And I'm a person that is, you can talk the talk, sure, but can you walk the walk? And normally a lot of politicians literally go backwards rather than forwards on that. So, and right there is where I'm personally concerned, and I know many other people, including my friends as well, that pay attention to what's going on in the world globally, are concerned that this may cause further, actions to not, burn out any flames, i.e., wars, sanctions, embargoes, overthrows, and that's something that I think a lot of us people need to pay attention to and be realistic on what we expect from our leaders that we elect versus, okay, what we know won't be feasible or even possible. Because what I'm trying to get at is keep your expectations really, really grounded. As we have seen in the past, I don't know, like 10 plus years, how many, politicians, whether they be running locally or, nationally, or even, dare I say, how the EU is, regionally or continentally, in how it dictates. Because that is something a lot of people need to pay attention to, more so than, watching your typical, TV show and, eating sloppy food, if you want. Not saying it's good. And here's another section, too, that illustrates my point even further regarding not trusting them. The far right is divided on this issue, too. Meloni, for example, has positioned herself as a staunch opponent of Russian influence in Europe, reportedly playing a key role in influencing skeptical EU leaders to support aid to Ukraine behind the scenes. By contrast, Le Pen's National Rally Party in France has been plagued by historical links to Moscow, and a win for the upcoming snap elections could threaten France's staunch support for Ukraine. Isn't that interesting? Because there's a key detail behind the scenes. So, like I said, it's all talk. Because behind the scenes, there's other negotiations, there's other investors that are like, no, you got to support Ukraine, and also in the Middle East, more so than the actual people of that country who elected those people. And that brings me to my point regarding that part of the paragraph. Now, this is also highly questionable, as even recently, from what I apparently heard from Le Pen's party members, may not cut, if anything or at all, financial or military aid to Ukraine. Now, I would have to do further research to see if that is true. I cannot guarantee that it is, nor can I say that it isn't. Again, I just heard from the grapevine. That's all. So this, makes the point mute, which I'm personally not surprised regarding, a lot of promises that are not going to be either upheld or even conducted at all. And the final section of this article, although Le Pen's party is less vocal than it once was on advocating closer ties with Russia, it has withheld support for Ukraine in key votes. She has previously vowed to limit France's military cooperation with NATO and resist subjugation to any American protectorate. I highly doubt this. As I stated a few minutes ago, they will have to wait and see if Le Pen's party members either go against her or Le Pen joins her own party members either through pressure or other, backdoor dealings. And surprisingly also, with the UK's, new elections coming up, I think in the end of this month or July, in early July, With Nigel Farage, with him, we will see how that goes too. Because at the same time, I want to see if his promises are going to be enacted too, which again, I highly doubt. So, again, keep your expectations low. And this may or may not have the ramifications that, a lot of mainstream media are, hyping out to be like, oh, this is going to be a ripple effect. Again, I highly doubt this. But there will be ramifications in terms of internal problems, either increasing further and also with the Ukraine conflict also increasing in terms of, if it's going to go, dare I say, full fallout. Yeah, that'd be about it for that. And yeah, thank you. And if you guys can leave a like and subscribe to my channel, I'd greatly appreciate that. And please look forward for more commentary of my opinions on the global, area of geopolitics and current news. So you have a wonderful day, guys. Have a good day.